80 hours. That's how long it took to create the dress you will see at the end of this video. A few months ago, I created a gown that was labeled the perfect dress for Glinda on social media. So naturally, I had to create its sister, a dress inspired by Elphaba. With Wicked for Good captivating audiences everywhere, I wanted to capture Elphaba's essence for the red carpet. I started with her iconic hat, that sculptural pleated silhouette, and her costumes filled with intricate micro-pleating. I studied some Madame Gray's micro-pleated taffeta gowns, but I also wanted volume, drama, and a true spectacle, which had led me to this dress from McQueen's Autumn-Winter 2019 collection. These gowns, combined with Cynthia Erivo's fearless approach to exaggerated sculptural silhouettes on the red carpet, gave me the perfect inspiration. The vision came together. A statement ball gown at 3/4 length, combining tight gathering with dramatic volume, all anchored by a show-stopping focal point. Let me show you how this dress came to life. I pulled out a corset that I used in previous projects, a solid foundation to build from. And after creating a quick mock-up, I started reshaping it for this new design. I wanted it to be closer fitting around the bust and cinched on the underbust. And I also added some new style lines to guide the dramatic silhouette to come. The first thing I wanted to figure out is the front of the design. The big fan that comes from under bust, which is the focal point of the entire dress, so it was quite important. I grabbed a piece of calico and started gathering. Then came the experimental part. I was pinning it to the corset, folding it, slashing into the fabric, testing different pleat arrangements. It was all about finding that perfect balance between structure and movement, where the fan felt like it was unfolding naturally from the body. I was trying to create some sharp angles around the waist area where the fan could be attached, but I wanted it to make sure that it still looks flattering. When we are creating huge designs like this, I think it's still important to make it flattering. Once the front started taking shape, I moved on to the underskirt, building the boning channels one by one, sculpting toward that specific volume I had in mind. So here is the thing about design development. You need to see the full picture as quickly as possible. Perfection can wait. Right now, I needed to understand where this dress was going and how all the elements would talk to each other. So even though nothing was finished, I was already constructing the skirt because I wanted to see the full picture, even if it's not perfect at this stage. Once I had somewhat of a structure, I used some gathered calico to see the shape of the skirt. To build the underskirt, I used plastic whalebones as I need this underskirt to be very strong. I started experimenting with the skirt. I knew I wanted a little dip at the waist and also to have a bubble hem with a split at the front. To create the bubble hem, I am going to add a lining to the skirt that is going to pull the hem up. Once I had this first visual, I was more confident to move on to the next stage. And the next stage is creating our first towel and just taking the pattern off of the drape and try to create some draft patterns to see a first towel. So I started marking the skirt position, and as you remember, I wanted a dip in the waist at the front. And I also marked the seam positions where the fan is going to get attached. I think I've said this more than once before, but it's super important to mark everything before you take it off of the dummy. Marking every seam line, every adjustment, every notch, because otherwise you're gonna be so confused if you don't have that. I had also made the adjustments to my existing corset pattern so it can fit this design. Of course, I started with marking notches along the seam lines and then cutting it all up. I decided to digitize and track all my pattern pieces in Clo 3D. I did a quick toile in 3D just to see the style lines and, just to visualize the whole thing and also just fix some fit issues. This is the quickest way to get ahead at the moment. I had worked a little bit more on my underskirt and I decided to make it curved on the hem so it can accommodate the bubble hem even better and smoother. Since I was entirely happy with the underskirt, I decided to build the final underskirt as it will be needed for the toweling stage. Here is a detail you might have noticed. There is a dip at the center front of the skirt, and that's intentional. I didn't want the front to be puffy. I wanted it somewhat flat, so the volume pushes to the sides and the back. So think less crinoline, more pannier, the 18th century silhouette where the drama lives in the hips. So here is the thing. Knowing the silhouette of the underskirt is not enough, not even close. Making a structure like this requires calculations, lots of calculations. Every boning channel needs to be divided evenly, attaching to each other at precise points to create that shape. It's geometry, it's engineering. It's a lot of math, which means a lot of notes. The kind of notes that make you question if you're a fashion designer or a structural engineer. Of course, one of my favorite parts of creating is when I am utterly, completely confused by my own design. For quite a few minutes, I could not figure out how I wanted to position this boning channel in my hoop skirt. I was trying to position that boning channel from so many different angles, like going under the dummy, going over the dummy, but I just couldn't figure out how to get it into place. Like I had it in my head, but I just didn't understand what I had in my head. Does this make sense? Please, someone tell me I'm not alone in this. But then I finally got there. I mean, it's a complicated loop, okay? So finally I could hand stitch all the intersections, which was a perfect way to calm myself down after this fiasco. I decided to create an other mock-up of the corset, just to make sure it's fine, and I actually still had some fit comments, but only minor changes. Like, for example, I didn't like the fit of the back panels, so I actually released the seams and just trying to see where it wants to go. It's a very good strategy when you're fitting, just to release the seams and see where this panel wants to go. And I still had a little bit of a fit issue around the bust area, but everything was just really minor. I also created a mock-up of the front fan, but I wanted to use the final taffeta fabric. A lot of design features are best to be tested in the actual fabric. Trust me, it will pay off in the end. So I have an initial tutorial, and I'm so glad that I actually have done this in the actual fabric and not in calico, because now I can see a lot of things. Well, first things first, I cut it on the wrong grain, so it doesn't like drape as nice as I want it to. Can you see, like, it's really bubbled as opposed to nice and rich like here on the body itself. Like, this is just a piece of fabric now that I just gathered and wanted to just see like the whole visual, you know. So I'm definitely going to redo this pattern, and I think I'm going to also like simplify this. So I think this is just all gonna get gathered, and I'm going to mock it up again, like on this section, just for me to see how it looks. What I'm happy with right now is the size, even though like I kind of like taken away a little bit here because it was just really too much to the side. So it was a little bit extreme. So yeah, and right now I'm just gonna recut this on the right grain and also do this gathering business all over again and just see. But another thing I wanted to quickly show is that how I'm going to make this stay up. And so I'm just going to have like pieces of boning encased in some grow grain and just insert them into the seams and just make sure that everything stays up as it should be, because otherwise if I didn't have this, probably it would just start flipping down. Okay, let's do it. So I slightly simplified the pattern and I decided to have only gathers and no pleats. And I also added just a little bit more volume. And of course I changed the grain. Even the gathering process was just so much smoother with the changed grain line. Once I was done, I just repinned it to the corset and it looked so much better. I was quite pleased. So guys, a little lesson in grain line and how important the grain line is, which I always say. And you can see the difference. I have changed the grain line. So this is all on the cross grain now, my taffeta fabric. And all the bubbling is gone. It just lays beautiful and exactly how I want it. So I'm just very happy with this. And yeah, just to remember, always test your grain line, because obviously what you would normally do is have this along the grain, because that's default, right? But this fabric actually drapes a lot nicer cross grain, as you can see. Okay, I did change the pattern a little bit, but trust me, this is not about the pattern. It's about the grain line. Just how bubbly it was before, and now it just lays very nicely. Yeah, I'm very happy. So we're gonna just move on. As we are getting closer and closer to how this dress is going to look, I wanted to pin the skirt and have another glimpse of the visual of the dress. It is very important for me to have these checkpoints on the way, because if I was just sitting at the sewing machine, not looking at anything, and just stitching and stitching without checking, I might end up very disappointed in the end, with a lot of time wasted. Since I was quite happy with how things were going, it was time to do the final alteration to the pattern and also start preparing the final pattern. And once I had that, it was time to start on the final dress. I started with the corset and the front fan. The front required a lot of fabric and a lot of gathering. If I remember right, it was about 4 meters of fabric in the front. By the way, guys, a pattern and a full tutorial will be available for this dress. So if you are interested, you can sign up for the waitlist in the description, and I'll let you know when it's available. For the corset, I used couture and a layer of taffeta. This is going to be our solid base on the inside. I pinroll the layers together. The point of this technique is that usually the inner layer that curves around the body, in our case the taffeta, becomes a little bit too big, so it needs to be a little smaller than the outer. By the way, in ready-to-wear, these pattern pieces are already prepared smaller, so no need for roll pinning. Next, I added the boning channels to the corset. And my corset was slowly taking shape. I'm always excited about finishing at least one part of a design. I like to do things in sections and little bits, and so it's a little bit less overwhelming. Next, I started to prepare the outer shell with all the seams that will hold the big fan. I decided to add some horsehair canvas to the taffeta for some extra strength. I stitched the layers together and added a few bonings to help to hold the shape. I wanted some gathered layers on the outer shell so they nicely blend in with the gathered fan. At this point, I haven't had a pattern for these layers, but I wanted to use the final fabric to figure out the dimensions, so I placed a gathered rectangle at these panels and figured out the shaping from that. The waist area of these panels are hand-gathered, which is later removed, and then tucked to the layer behind. This way, I can still control this area without visible stitching. Once the final panel is positioned and secured, we will set the folds with some gentle steaming. I decided to take a little rest from the upper area of the dress and prepare some elements of the skirt. The skirt has 4 panels, and they are mainly just rectangles of fabric except the front panel, which has a slight shaping. I decided to use my initial mock-up as a pattern for the front panels because that was just the easiest thing to do, to be honest. It didn't need me to actually make this into a paper pattern. And of course, the endless gathering has started. I was gathering for hours and hours, not to talk about how easily the taffeta frays. So along the seams, I actually had to overcut stitch it because I don't have an overlocker, and so I needed to use my machine to do some overcut stitching so it would stop fraying. So that took a little bit of time. It was time for a checkpoint. At this point, since the dress was not completely assembled, the pieces were a little awkward to put on my dummy, so I needed to slide the dress from below. I also spent a little time trying to push the hoop skirt through my skirt, so the struggle was real. But I needed to see where we are. It's better now than later. Okay guys, a little bit of like a checkpoint. So I just pinned the skirt now over the underskirt just to see what's going on. I can see, I mean, initially I planned to have another row of boning here on the hoop skirt, which is necessary and needed because as you can see, this kind of like kicks out and then just drops in, which is not nice. So I need something to kind of push this out a little bit more so it's a nice curved bubble hem. And also I'm going to do like a layer of tulle on top of the hoop skirt, so actually the outer skirt can lay much smoother, and hopefully you're not going to see the bonings sticking out underneath the fabric. And also another thing, oh, and this is still missing the lining, which is going to grab the hem of the bubble skirt. And also just something I wanted to talk about with this middle panel, and it's like a little bit like a tip for you guys. As you can see, it goes a little bit in and then out on the waist, which I think is a nice way to finish panels like this, because it gives you an illusion of a cinched waist. So even though you're not going to have the waist visible on this dress, because you're going to have all the big fan here on the front, you're still going to have illusion of a cinch waist, because I have this waist area more gathered than on the top, as you can see. So I have like a slight angle and then it fans out. So I think this is a nice detail, and for you to remember as well, maybe for another project. I mean, if it suits your design, of course. That I think it's very nice to have at least the illusion of a waist, even though when your waist is not visible, because I think it can be quite unflattering if I had this panel like just, you know, straight pleats down. Yeah. So basically, just gather it closer than you would on the top, so you actually have this angle going on here. So I think it's a nice detail. So okay, so I need to finish the underskirt, add the tulle layer, and also finish the outer shell with all the gathered panels. So I still have a lot to go. It's a big project, guys. I hope you like it, and I hope it's gonna look nice. Because so far, like, I worked so much on this now. Like, I've been working on this for several days spread out in the last few weeks. So let's hope. Let's hope it's nice. Okay, let's get moving. So I moved on to creating the tulle layer. This panel is going to get a yoke because I don't want all this gathering going into one seam. Also, I think it's just nicer to have that lift starting a little lower. I also had a little bit of finishing touches on my underskirt. Then finally it was time to put it all together, finishing the corset and adding some bonings. I also used synthetic whalebone for the corset, as I did on the skirt. And then it was time to assemble the skirt layers. Obviously, I already had the outer shell, so I just added the tulle layer. And then it's going to get attached to the waist seam. What you can see here is actually the inside of the dress. And as you can see, I have added a waist stay. Most of my designs, especially the ones with a heavy skirt or something to hold, is going to have a waist stay. A waist stay can hold your entire dress pretty firmly on the body. It was also time for a final mess up. Anybody else here hates linings? Of course, I stitched the inner layer the wrong way around, so it was also time for a final unpicking. I do this so often. It's so annoying. Even though I try and I position it correctly, and somehow I still end up stitching the lining wrong. The good thing is that I only attached like 2 seams before I realized what happened. So it was an easy fix. Adding the hoop skirt to my skirt was not easier this time around either, but somehow I eventually managed. So it seems we have a skirt with a little bit of shaping to it. I finished the hem with grosgrain and then attached it to the lining. I added the grosgrain because I just thought it was just much easier to handle because the hem needed to be hand stitched as well. It was impossible to get inside the dress at this point. The entire front area had to be hand stitched. There was just too much happening. And hand stitching seemed to be the only way to piece it all together with the precision and control it needed. So this is how I spent 80 hours making this dress.